Welcome back to the Stack Shack Sports Show. Video 2 of today as we get caught up. Again, apologies for missing a couple days there. Had some unexpected travel, but we're getting caught up. We will be able to preview every single team in the NFL before the start of the season. Wrapping up our AFC North conversation with the Pittsburgh Steelers. A team that, if Mike Tomlin's the coach, you kind of always expect him to be in the mix. He's just dominant at getting winning seasons every year. But really a team that I think, fans around the league, you're a Pittsburgh fan, you're expecting deep playoff runs and Super Bowls. They're kind of this team that's been honestly stuck in perpetual middle of the pack. Haven't been able to burst through that bubble and become one of those top 2, 3, 4 Super Bowl contenders. They're really a team that you never expect to be bad. They continue to win games and continue to make the playoffs pretty consistently, but then also continue to get bounced in the first round. So that trend continued last season. They were 10-7, another winning season, another wild card playoff game, and another loss in that wild card playoff game. It's just what they are, and it's tough. So we'll look at some of the key additions and losses. Will these additions and losses affect? Can they finally kind of claw their way out of, the middle of the road in the AFC? A stacked AFC, an AFC that continues to get better each season. So some key losses. Kenny Pickett, right? And that goes along with the key addition of Russell Wilson and also Justin Fields, who's not on this list. I felt that Van Jefferson and Patrick Queen were more deserving of being on the key additions. But we'll talk about the quarterback controversy, or is there one, in a moment. So Kenny Pickett leaves. Russell Wilson comes in. Kenny Pickett decides, I don't want to stick around. I'm out. And so they lose Kenny Pickett, a quarterback that the Steelers drafted to kind of be the next Ben Roethlisberger. He's a Pittsburgh kid, went to Pitt in college. Longtime starter. Kind of was expected, I know, at least for me personally, I expected him to be able to make a quick impact. The question was always, we kind of had seen what his ceiling was, and I didn't think it was that great. And that proved to be mostly the case in Pittsburgh. As a rookie, he played, I would say maybe in some ways better than a lot of rookies, but he didn't have the talent to go to that next level. And I think just kind of plateaued. Really solid college quarterback. Somebody who I think you'd be happy to have as a backup, as a capable backup. I don't think he's that starting franchise guy. He does not have the ceiling that a lot of other players around the league do. So Pittsburgh decides to move off of him, bring in Russell Wilson. Now, they also lost Deontay Johnson. Now, Johnson, in my opinion, this might be a good thing to let him go. There had been plenty of controversies in that wide receiver room over the year. And, he's a good player, but maybe it's time to let him go. Keep the culture, keep that locker room intact. They also, though, lost Allen Robinson, which I think not enough people are talking about. A solid wide receiver, not a wide receiver 1, not even really a wide receiver 2, but as a wide receiver 3, as an extra guy to go catch the ball and as an extra weapon in that offense, pretty solid. Now, they do bring in Van Jefferson, who, in my opinion, kind of fits that Allen Robinson role. That's where I see him fitting in, and I think that's a good pickup. So I don't see a net loss there. Key addition, though, one of the more blockbuster moves is Patrick Queen, right? And to get him from an in-division rival is crazy, right? Fantastic linebacker. I think that really does, keep boosting that Steelers defense. Now, very similar to the conversation we were having about the Browns and who they picked up and who they went after. The offense was the problem, not the defense. And so I don't know how Queen solves offensive issues, but definitely shores up that defense. And I think, again, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, that's how they're planning on fixing the offense. They're saying, we think we have the weapons, we just need to get the quarterback better. Russell Wilson, last season, as much as people want to dog on him, the last couple years in Denver, let's be real, Seattle probably won that trade, right? but his numbers are not that bad. They're actually quite good if you look at touchdown to interception ratio, total yards. They were scoring some points. They were doing okay in Denver. I don't think Russell Wilson is completely washed like a lot of people want to say he is. Yes, was it rocky with Sean Payton? Yes, was it a disaster the year before with Nathaniel Hackett? Absolutely. But Pittsburgh does have some decent options. Pickens is still out there on the outside. They have decent wide receivers. They've got, an okay offensive line. Russell Wilson, historically, has been a fairly mobile quarterback, although he's not as mobile as he once was. How does he fare? How does he fare in Pittsburgh? It is a weird fit, I think, kind of culturally. You look at the quarterbacks that thrive in Pittsburgh, Terry Bradshaw, Ben Roethlisberger. Russell isn't really the quintessential Pittsburgh quarterback, in my opinion. He's a little on the smaller side. How is that going to affect him? We talk about weather with Tua. When we reviewed the Dolphins and took a look at what their season entailed, we talked about Tua in the weather. Now, Russell, he played in Denver, Mile High, so it's not the greatest weather ever. But Seattle and Denver, Pittsburgh's a little different, and we'll have to see how he can adapt to the cold weather, potentially some of the winds. I think it's going to be interesting. Now, a quarterback who has been playing in the cold weather is Justin Fields. And how do those two match in? Obviously, Russell comes into Pittsburgh with an okay image, but not a great image. Justin Fields comes in with a bad image. It's very interesting. You kind of have these two quarterbacks, one old, one young, relatively. And both of them kind of are coming to Pittsburgh to try and rebuild their brands, rebuild their image, and try and prove themselves. One might say maybe this is their final chance. If Russell bombs in Pittsburgh, I don't see him getting a lot of other jobs long-term at the top levels, right? I think he turns into Joe Flacco, kind of a backup around the league wherever he goes. In many cases, both, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks who had their time but are starting to age and maybe show some weaknesses. And so if Russell doesn't perform in Pittsburgh, I think he maybe moves into that perpetual backup. A solid backup, but not the player he once was, at least not from the outside looking in. We're not going to expect as much from Russell if he bombs in Pittsburgh. And I think the same is true for Justin Fields. I think this is Justin's last chance. Obviously, right now, I think most of us have him pegged as the backup. But should he get an opportunity, should Russell get hurt, or they want to try Justin out, this is his last chance, I think, to prove himself. If Justin Fields does not work in Pittsburgh, I think he's out of the league. Maybe he becomes a long-term backup, but a lot of times with a backup quarterback, you're either looking for somebody who's past their prime, an older guy who can come in. Look at what Jacoby Brissett does. Look at what Joe Flacco is doing, right? That's more the path for Russell Wilson. Aging quarterback, not the same as he once was, but probably still mentally capable of teaching the younger players, working in the offense, really making the team better from what they can do off the field rather than what they can do on the field, and then very capable should something happen. You look at a player like Sam Darnold right now, thrust in to the starting job with J.J. McCarthy getting hurt. Very capable backup. Hopefully will be a solid piece. Now, Russell's obviously a little older than Sam Darnold, but a similar case. The problem for Justin is I don't see that avenue. He never was a super productive quarterback, and he really isn't that old. So you're saying, okay, what trait does he have that he could really sell himself on as a backup? Probably his legs, his athleticism. Problem is, if you look around the league, there's not a lot of great places for him to end up where he's the right fit as a backup. I think maybe the only one to me that would make significant sense would be in Baltimore behind Lamar Jackson. Again, a quarterback who's really good with their legs. I don't think he fits in Buffalo. I don't think he's got the arm talent or strength or power that a Josh Allen brings. And I don't think he's a good fit for a team, like Cincinnati or even Miami. Or, you look around the league, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that are backups that their main trait is athleticism. A lot of times the backup quarterback is, let's match up something that's similar to the starter. Again, this is why I think Lamar is probably the only person he could be the backup for, just because Lamar is so explosive with his legs and because Baltimore uses those legs as a primary focus of the offense. Not going to back up Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to go and play in the system behind Brock Purdy, right? You look around the league, there's not a lot of good places for him as a backup. So I think this is a really, really important season for both quarterbacks. They both, I think, need to prove themselves. Justin obviously has a little more time. Russell has to cook from the beginning. We're going to have to see. There is some competition in that, camp right now for who's going to get that starting job. I personally would be quite shocked if Justin Fields got it. But if Russell has a tough start, we'll have to see how it goes. Now, looking at some important games to wrap up this video, Week 3 versus the Chargers, I think is going to be an exciting matchup. It's going to be an early test for Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert against what should be a pretty solid Steelers defense. Also going to be an opportunity, to host out of division team. The problem for the Steelers, and the reason I have serious concerns about them making the playoffs coming down the stretch, is look at weeks 11 through 14. If you're a Pittsburgh fan, that's your season. You play the Ravens at home. Then you go at the Browns, at the Bengals, Browns at home. You play the Browns 2 out of 3 weeks. And in between, you go at Cincinnati. That's your season. If you're, trying to project what's going to happen to the Steelers, it's what you believe is going to happen weeks 11 through 14. I think that's really tough to go back to back to back. Now, Tomlin might be the one coach who's ready to get a team prepped for that kind of a stretch, but that's their season. Those 4 games will decide. If they win the majority of those, I think they're a playoff team. If they lose the majority of those, I don't think they make the playoffs. There it is, weeks 11 through 14. Besides that, I'm not going to be really concerned about what's going on in Pittsburgh. Until they get to week 11, obviously they can't lose all 10 games, but they can bounce around. It doesn't really matter. Week 11 through 14, that is when you are going to know, will Pittsburgh go to the playoffs or not. It's going to be tough. I'm never going to bet against Mike Tomlin having a winning season because that's what he does. But weeks 11 through 14 are going to be a very tough stretch. Let me know down in the comments below, Pittsburgh fans. I want to hear your thoughts. To me, that looks like a brutal 4-game stretch. You'll have to let me know what you think. Who do you want to be as quarterback? Personally, if I was a Pittsburgh fan, I think I'd lean Russell because at least he's been productive, whereas Justin Fields has really not looked good in Chicago. But I don't know, maybe you want the young guy. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and we'll see you tomorrow.